Coming up today, the email accounts of nearly 100 South Korean government officials have been hacked by North Korea. There are concerns state secrets could have been leaked. South Korea posted a record-high current account surplus in the month of June, smashing the previous record set last year by $300 million. First, the Korean stock market extends trading hours by half an hour a day in a bid to boost transactions and trade volume. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's noon on Monday, the 1st of August. You're tuned in to our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thank you ever so much for joining us. I'm Mark Broom. North Korea's latest hack attack is our starting point this afternoon. Prosecutors in South Korea have revealed the email accounts of government officials and journalists working in North Korea-related ministries have been compromised. They say North Korean hackers based in China were behind the cyber attacks. Our Connie Kim has our top story.
An email has been sent from what appears to be an online portal website. Once a user clicks on the attached file, it requests the user to change the email password, which is then sent to the hackers. South Korean prosecutors say this is one of the phishing websites North Korea set up to target 90 officials from the Foreign Affairs, Defense, and Unification ministries in the first 6 months this year. Prosecutors say the hackers stole more than 50 email passwords and are looking into whether any state secrets or other critical data was obtained through the hacks. The IP addresses used by the hackers trace back to Seonyang in China's northeast. The prosecution says the hackers are believed to be the same group that hacked into Korea Hydro and Nuclear Power Corporation in 2014, stealing internal data that included plant blueprints and the personal information of employees. The prosecution has requested users monitor login records and change passwords frequently to prevent additional hacking attacks. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Now, in other news, Oxy-Reckitt Benckiser is now accepting applications for compensation from the victims of its toxic humidifier disinfectant. The British-based firm laid out its final compensation plan on Sunday. It said it would fully cover the victims' medical expenses and provide up to $315,000 to the family of those adults seriously harmed or killed by exposure to the said product. Oxy will provide almost $900,000 for infants and children who were seriously affected or died because of the chemicals. The final compensation package is almost identical to the original offer, which was presented in June, except that it includes additional compensation of $45,000 if there is more than one victim in the same household. Now, the negative news on the trade front continues to roll in, with Korea's exports on a downward spiral for the longest period ever now. And what's even more worrisome to some analysts is that outbound shipments are back to double-digit drops. Kim Min-ji with the details.
Korea's exports took another dive in July, extending the downward trend to a record 19th straight month. The Trade Ministry says outbound shipments tumbled 10.2% from a year ago to $41 billion. There had been some recovery hopes after the pace of decline slowed for the previous 2 months, but July's figure is back to the double-digit decline seen earlier in the year. The fall was mainly attributed to temporary factors, such as fewer working days in July, as well as a slump in ship exports. However, in a glint of hope, when excluding those factors, the pace of decline in average daily exports was the lowest this year. Still, a spike in exports of computers and a slowing contraction in Korea's key export items, including flat panel displays and petroleum products, wasn't enough to prop up the overall figures. On top of that, exports of ships plunged more than 40% on year due to delays in delivery, while shipments also fell in the auto industry due to slow demand in emerging markets and a strike which negatively affected production. Imports, on the other hand, fell 14% on year to $33.3 billion, also sliding for the 19th straight month. With that, the trade surplus came to $7.8 billion in July, extending the surplus streak to 54 straight months. While the ministry expects export conditions to improve in the second half, thanks to the recovering global economy, it said it will closely monitor possible repercussions in the aftermath of Britain's vote to leave the European Union. The ministry added that it will also keep close tabs on the slowdown in emerging markets and vowed to take necessary measures so that export growth rebound to positive territory. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now, Korea's current account surplus hit a record high in June, extending its surplus streak to a 52nd straight month. The Bank of Korea said the surplus in June reached nearly $12.2 billion with the help of a surplus in the goods balance. The previous monthly record was nearly $11.9 billion. That was set in June 2015. The surplus in the products account came to $12.8 billion, up from a $10.7 billion surplus in the previous month. Exports increased 6.6% from May, while imports increased by 2.3%. The deficit in the service sector rose from $1.1 billion in May to nearly $1.4 billion. Investors will have an extra 30 minutes a day to trade stocks and other commodities on Korea's markets from today. Korea Exchange expects the extension to give a much-needed boost to the country's benchmark Kospi, which has been stuck in the 1,800 to 2,000 level for years now. Kim Mo-kyun reports.
Korea Exchange has announced Korea's stock and foreign exchange markets and gold exchange will extend their trading hours by 30 minutes from August 1st. The opening time will remain the same at 9 a.m., but the regular session for the stock and gold markets will close half an hour later at 3:30 p.m. Derivatives trading will end at 3:45 instead of 3:15. But Korea Exchange decided to cut 30 minutes from after-hours trading, which will now run from 3:40 to 6 p.m. The latest move marks the first change in 16 years. In the year 2000, the market operator eliminated the lunch hour break. The trading hours of Asian stock markets are generally shorter than other parts of the world, with Japan operating for 5 hours a day and China just 4. Advanced markets such as those in the U.S. operate for 6.5 hours a day, while Britain and Germany's markets are open for 8.5 hours each. Korea Exchange predicts the 30 minutes extension will see an 8% increase in trade volume, raising daily transactions by up to $610 million. It's also expected to help the domestic stock market escape from the box pattern, which the Kospi has been locked in for more than 6 years.
The extension will give investors more transaction opportunities and the chance to make use of China-related products more efficiently. It will also help Korea escape from the so-called Box P.
However, competition with Beijing is expected to grow since the extended hours will allow investors to reflect market information from the Chinese market, which closes at 4 p.m. Korea time. Kim Mo-kyun, Arirang News.
Now, the U.S. Air Force is sending B-1 stealth bombers to Guam for the first time in a decade. The Hawaii-based Pacific Command says an undisclosed number of B-1s will deploy to Andersen Air Force Base on August 6th to replace B-52 bombers that have been on Guam as part of the U.S. Air Force's continuous bomber presence mission. The B-1 bombers will be accompanied by about 300 airmen. The move comes as China has been upping its flights in the increasingly tense South China Sea. Officials say the B-1s, which have a low radar cross-section and can fly at more than 1,500 kilometers an hour, will provide the U.S. with a significant rapid global strike capability. With Election Day less than 100 days away, Hillary Clinton has regained a razor-thin lead over her Republican rival Donald Trump after she accepted her nomination at last week's Democratic National Convention. According to a poll published by the Morning Consult on nearly 2,000 registered voters on Sunday, Clinton had a 3-point lead over Trump with 43% and 40% respectively. This is a 7-point swing from the previous poll, which saw Trump surge to a 4-point lead with 44% to 40% following the Republican Party's convention. The poll also showed that Clinton made gains with independent voters and with men. The latest survey has a margin of error of plus or minus 2 percentage points. The Islamic State militant group has called for more terror attacks against Christians through its propaganda magazine. The call comes after the killing of a priest in France, which has sparked fears the group wants to incite a religious war. EG1 reports.
The Islamic State militant group has called for more terror attacks against Christians. The cover of the latest issue of the group's Dabiq magazine, released on Sunday, shows an ISIS member ripping a cross off the roof of a church with the title "Break the Cross." In the magazine, ISIS calls on others to join the terror group and for its members in Western countries to attack Christians without hesitation, citing the latest attacks by jihadists in Orlando, France, Germany, and Bangladesh as examples. The magazine also seeks to explain the group's recent terror attacks and suggests the cross worshippers and democratic pagans of the West should repent by abandoning Christianity and accepting Islam. The militant group also urges its members to target Pope Francis, saying he's hiding behind a deceptive veil of goodwill toward Muslims. The magazine's release comes amid a heightened state of alert in Europe and the US after 2 men who pledged allegiance to the ISIS killed a French priest just last week, as well as a string of other ISIS-inspired attacks. Analysts see the statements as part of the militant group's efforts to cast itself as a protector of Muslims and incite a religious conflict between Christians and Muslims. However, there are already reports of efforts by members of both religions to practice a spirit of openness toward one another while pledging not to give in to fear. Muslims and Christians came together at an event on Sunday to pray for the victims of the recent shooting in Munich that left 9 people dead. Muslims also participated in a mass on Friday held at a church close to where the French priest was killed, as well as services in churches around Europe. 이지원, Arirang News.
Japan's capital, Tokyo, has elected its first ever female governor. Yuriko Koike, who ran as an independent, claimed victory in Sunday's election despite running without the consent of the ruling Liberal Democratic Party. The 64-year-old former defense minister garnered over 2.8 million votes, topping her top 2 rivals by more than 1 million votes. The election, contested by a field of 21 candidates, was called after Tokyo's former governor resigned over a financial scandal. As governor, Koike will be tasked with handling Tokyo's preparations for the 2020 Olympics that have been plagued by scandal after scandal and numerous budget-related concerns. Now back here in Korea, and sales at duty-free shops are on the road to recovery thanks to a rise in tourists to the country. According to Statistics Korea and the Korea Customs Service on Monday, sales at duty-free shops in June rose almost 95%, almost twice the amount from the year before. The report sees the figure as part of a natural rebound from the drop last year after the end of the MERS outbreak. Also, twice the number of Chinese tourists visited Korea this June compared to last year after the release of the Korean drama Descendants of the Sun. Experts say, however, that duty-free shops will have to broaden their target market to include Southeast Asian tourists, as political issues such as China's objections to the deployment of the THAAD missile defense system to South Korea could lead to a drop in Chinese tourists. A local research team has developed technology to mass-produce a type of algae from Korea's southern resort island of Jeju. It's just one project in the works to develop new resources from the island. Park Se-young tells us more.
Spirulina, a type of algae, is one of the oldest life forms on Earth. Usually found in the tropics, it contains various beneficial pigments including beta-carotene and chlorophyll A. Spirulina can be used to make food, drugs, and cosmetics, and it also has the potential to substitute for over $86 million worth of imports. Now a team of Korean researchers has developed a technology to mass-produce spirulina using seawater from Jeju Island. By matching the water temperature to an optimal range of 32 to 42 degrees Celsius, the team was able to set up a marine life cultivation system. The new system can boost the production capacity from 8 to as much as 250 times that of existing ones.
Jeju is the perfect place for developing products like the famous bottled water brand Samdasu, as we can ensure cleanliness and stability.
The research is part of a broader effort to secure useful resources from Jeju Island, which has seen its surface sea temperature rise 1.5 degrees over the last 3 decades, bringing rapid changes to its marine ecosystem. Park Se-young, Arirang News.
Now, the blistering heat we've been feeling here in Korea is going to continue into this month of August across most of the country. Heat wave warnings have been issued across most of the country, in fact, pretty much everywhere. Seoul started out the day at nearly 26 degrees Celsius in the early hours of this morning, and the high will get up to a sweltering 33 degrees Celsius by the middle of the day. The southern provinces will remain scorching hot as well, with highs of 35 degrees in Gwangju and 34 in Busan. Inland areas and the coast will have some relief, with a 60 to 70% chance of rain in the forecast this afternoon. Those regions can expect up to 50 millimeters of rain, accompanied by strong winds and even thunderstorms. Well, those are stories we've been following on this Monday afternoon here in Seoul. For more of the latest, don't forget to check out the website arirang.com/news. We also have our smartphone application. You can find it by searching for Arirang TV in the usual places. Have a great start to the week. Goodbye.